Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Moadim L'Simcha. Today we're going to be reading from the book of Exodus, at least out of the first Sefer Torah. And we're reading from the parasha of Ki Tisa. And I want to focus a little bit on a moment that is a moment that I'm trying to place feelings into Moshe. And I want to think about this from the perspective of Moshe, what it is that Moshe was trying to accomplish, and then what God's response to that is. So if we look at page 539, 539, Exodus chapter 33. If you look a little earlier, actually, where we're starting our Torah reading, it says, Moses says to the Lord, "See, you say to me, lead this people forward, but you have not made known to me who you will send with me. Further, you have said, I've singled you out by name, and you have indeed gained my favor. But if I've truly gained your favor, let me know your ways, that I may know you and continue in your favor." So Moshe is saying, look, you have said to me, I'm special. There's nobody been quite like me, right? And I've done a good job so far. I've done everything that you've wanted me to do. And you've said, I've done a good job. You've given me that pat on the back. Please, give me some insight. Give me some insight into you, God. Let me know you so that I can better serve you. That's what I'm hearing here. Let me know you so that I can better serve you. And God said, I will go in the lead, I will lighten your burden. Yes, you've done a great job. But then we get down to verse 17. And the Lord said to Moses, I will also do this thing that you have asked, for you have truly gained my favor, and I have singled you out by name. You are special, Moses. You are. And so Moses then says to God, Hareini na et kvodecha. The English translation is, let me behold your presence. We'll talk about the grammar in a little bit. But let me see you. Let me fully, truly behold your kavod, your glory. And God answered, I will make all of my goodness, kol tovi, right? All of my goodness pass before you. I will give you my name, right? I will give you my grace. I will give you my mercy, but you cannot see my face, for nobody may see me and live. It's a very powerful moment, and I want to think about this a little bit, and I want to try to figure out, what do we think Moshe was trying to accomplish here? What was his motivation? And what was God's motivation? Because, look, let's take it at face value. God can do anything here, right? God could have made it ostensibly so that Moshe could have seen him. Now, that might have meant different things. Might have meant that Moshe would have died. And as a matter of fact, if we skip all the way to the very, very end of the Torah, the rabbis say, how is it that Moshe died? He got his wish. He was finally able to see God's face, and in that moment, he died. Some of the commentators say that, not all of them. So what's going on here? What's going on here? Isaac?
I mean, it's weird to bring up this person in a synagogue, considering some of the things he wrote about Jews, but it almost reads like H.P. Lovecraft. Like, Moses is trying to serve this being which is so outside of his realm of understanding, so beyond humanity, that in order to even comprehend it means you die. That it's not something which is even physically comprehensible to human mind. And so Moses has to sort of take on faith that serving this is the right thing, but it's almost, it feels very horrifying. There's some aspect of like horror, like even Moses is insignificant for
Right.
the enormousness, not enormity, that's a different word, for the enormousness of the presence
Yes.
That even the greatest among us could not survive it for an instant.
It's very disheartening. I'm just going to repeat it for the people who are listening at home, right? It's very disheartening, Isaac is saying, and I agree, that even Moses, the greatest among us, right, is not going to be able to truly comprehend God, to truly see God. Even Moses wasn't enough. And, right, one of the midrashim that comments on this is actually a very famous midrash. I want to get the right. Andrionas Caesar, right? The Caesar of the time came and said, "Let me see your God." And he came to Rabbi Yeshua, right? "Let me see your God." And Rabbi Yeshua says, "You can't see God." He says, "I want to see," and Caesar says, "I want to see God." So what did Rabbi Yeshua do? Rabbi Yeshua said, "Okay, well, look up at the sun." And the Caesar says, "I can't look up at the sun." And Rabbi Yeshua's response was, "Well, if you can't look up at the sun, which is just one of God's attendants, how do you possibly think that you're going to be able to comprehend God, right? We're limited. We're finite, right?" That's from one of the midrashim. I can't see which one it is right now. But so I agree. It's a little disheartening to be able to say, we're never going to do it. And if Moses couldn't do it, then certainly we're not going to be able to understand God.
It's a little bit weird though, because well, first of all, this whole parsha is like so disturbing because it has the Cheta Egel that's coming like right before, where the people need this sign.
Yeah.
And it's like all of a sudden, well, your God isn't coming, so we're going to make our own. And now Moshe is almost like in the same sort of predicament where he needs a sign. But the weird thing is, and maybe I'm just not translating it right, in Pasuk Yudalef 11, it says, like right before that, 5:38, the Lord would speak to Moses face to face as one man speaks to another.
Correct.
So it's kind of like they have this pretty intense relationship already, and I don't know if he wants to just push the envelope
Yeah.
more. Like maybe I just need more of that.
Yes, I think you're right. What Diana is saying here is that in verse 11, it says Moshe and God have this unique close relationship, that they're speaking face to face, although that's more metaphorically, because otherwise we would assume that it'd be the end of the conversation. But this idea of a back and flow conversation, like think about it. Our other prophets, for the most part, especially the later prophets, don't speak to God in that way. They get messages from God, right? They respond sometimes by their actions, right? God tells Jonah to go someplace, he goes the opposite place, right? That may be, but it's really Moses that has this conversation with God on all times and all parts of his life, and yet he wants more. Yet he wants more, and that's, I think, part of this. Yes.
Yeah, as Diana pointed out, right, it says that he spoke face to face with him, and then in verse 20 he says, "Well, you can't see my face." So then I thought about it. I said, well, what is the difficulty, or what happens? Why can he experience his compassion, his grace, everything else about God? And God is not, I don't want to
Anthropomorphize.
Yes, God, right? He's not a human, right? He doesn't have, in my mind, he doesn't have a face. So the way I interpret it is the only way you can see God is not in the physical world. You can only see God after you leave the physical world, because humans just can't, just like we can't experience some things, that are theoretically in other dimensions, right? Same kind of thing. So I think of it like that there's just no way to see him. If you want to see me, okay, you can see me, but you're going to have to die to see me.
Right. So what Mike is arguing is there's sort of an impossibility of physical creatures perceiving, or I'll reframe it again. We say that God is the Ein Sof, God is infinite. By definition, the finite cannot perceive the infinite. Right? You can try to conceive of it, but you're never going to be able, because you are finite. You're limited, and at a certain point in time, no matter how good you are, no matter how smart you are, you're going to run up onto your limits. And therefore, you're never going to be able to fully understand. And maybe that's what's going on here, right? Maybe God is saying, I'm trying to protect you here. You're finite. If you saw the true infinite nature, my true nature, right, it would destroy you because you're finite, and the finite cannot contain the infinite. Perhaps. Good. Anything else? It's interesting how the rabbis respond to this. So Rashi is, that's where we always go first. We look at Rashi. And Rashi actually doesn't explain the words, he explains almost the tone and the attitude, right? It says here, Ra'a Moshe shehaya et ratzonu dvarav mekubalim, ve'osif lish'ol laharoto mar'it kvodo. That Moses saw that he had an in here, that things were going well. It's kind of like when a kid is asking their parent something, and they see their parent is in a good mood and saying yes, right? So you kind of try to sneak in a couple of extra yeses in there, right, before your parent finally says, no. And I think that's what Rashi is saying, is Moshe saw that God was well disposed to him and said, all right, let me ask for this. Maybe I'll get this as well. That's one response, one answer. The piece that is so interesting to me, and I want to get back to the grammar of this, and then I'm going to tie it into Pesach. The grammar here, what is Moses asking? Har'eni. It's in the he feel, it's in the causative, right? Moses is saying, God, I want you to cause me to see you. And I think that's a problem. And God said, I can't cause you to see me. You have to find a way to perceive me. And by the way, the interesting thing is, you talked, Diana, about what comes immediately before this, which is the calf, right? What comes immediately after this is the carving of the second commandments. So what actually happens, right? It's almost as if God is saying, you want to know me? Write this down. That's how you're going to know me. That's how you're going to figure it out. I can't cause you to see me. I can't cause you to understand. But if you live this life, if you behave in this way, you are going to understand me. And it's a powerful way of thinking about God. I've talked about this before, but when I was at NYU Medical Center as a hospital chaplain there, I was struggling. I was still in rabbinical school. I was struggling, and I had a very sort of, I identify with this moment because I had a very Moses moment like this, where here I am, dedicating my life to becoming a rabbi, to serving God, and yet I don't have any more proof or understanding than anybody else does in terms of if God is there, if God isn't there. And I was in a mood one day, and we went to something called IPR, which is Interpersonal Relations Seminar. The way I teach it, when I talk about it, is it's kind of a cross between group therapy and the Spanish Inquisition, right? It's meant for chaplains to really dig deep into your feelings and what's going on and all of this kind of stuff. It's not always a pleasant experience, but it was my particular day, and I was sort of railing against this, what I thought was unfair, right? That here we are devoting ourselves to all of this, and I just like a little burning bush, something to be able to say, hey, I'm here, this is real, just show me, right? I was saying the same thing. And as anybody who's been in therapy knows, when the hour's done, and you got to go back to life, even if you don't have any answers yet. And so I went up to my floor, which is a very interesting type of floor at NYU Medical Center. This was in the 90s, and they were trying to deal with anybody who's been in a hospital room knows you have no privacy, right? Doctors and nurses come in and out all the time. So they were trying a different model for patients that needed to be there for extended periods of time and on a regular basis. So most of the people on my floor were either cancer patients or those people who were living with AIDS at the time and needed treatment for that. And they had these apartment rooms that basically were hospital beds and things like that, but those were private areas. And unless there was an emergency, nobody went into those rooms. And for treatment, you came to a general central treatment area. It was a very interesting model because it gave people a little bit more dignity and privacy as you went through. And I went up to my floor, and I started talking to a young man who was living with AIDS and was really struggling at that time with it. And he started to ask me the same questions that I was just asking 20 minutes ago in IPR, almost verbatim. And it was one of those really powerful spiritual moments when I sort of felt like God was saying to me, okay, you want to play? Let's play. Right? You want to ask the questions? Now answer them. And it made me realize that you don't find the answers to the questions just by asking them. You find the answers to the questions by engaging in them. Right? And I think that's what Moses missed here. He's like, show me. And God says, I can't show you. You have to do. Go do, and then you'll understand. And for me, it was the same thing where I was like, show me. I want to know. And yet, I found God so powerfully in that moment. I didn't have any more answers than I did 20 minutes ago. But in our effort to both struggle with those same questions, we both felt God's presence in that moment in a very powerful way. And I think to me, that's what Pesach is about, right? We're being asked to consider ourselves as if we were slaves. We're being asked to try to think about what that may have been like. We can't really do that. It's hard. And yet, what we do is we talk, we discuss, we bring it into today. We say, let's live this, and then maybe we'll understand. It's the way we, as Jews, it's the way we interact with our tradition. It's the way we interact with the people that are around us. And it's why I think the response to Moshe's request, and God was very kind here. He's saying, I'm going to do everything I can to help you. He didn't shut Moses down. He just said, I can't do that for you. I can't show you this. You have to live it. You have to figure it out. And the way to do that, write these things down. Right? Carve the second set. Start there. Start with the basics. Then work your way out from there. It's a really, really powerful lesson. And to me, it's the central theme of Pesach. Pesach is the holiday that we do. Right? We take these concepts and we do to try and understand what these are. And so I encourage you to continue doing by eating matzah, not eating chametz, thinking about these things as we go through this holiday, and figure out what are the moments in your life that you can engage in the question and maybe deepen your understanding. Shabbat shalom.